Hey everyone, I apologize for the bit of a delay. I had some technical difficulties on my end, but in this segment, I want to give a special shout out to Yvette, who suggested that I do a tutorial on how to get blue-black hair dye. So that was a really good question that Yvette asked, because blue-black hair dye is one of the interesting shades that you have, because typically you'll find that a lot of hair colors tend to be more natural, or they'll tend to have like a dark brown, but they don't have like a true like pen ink black color. And then there's another issue too, is that most of the time when people are coloring their hair, they're not taking into account the fact that if you mix the wrong developer, you can actually lighten the shade. So a lot of people, when they're doing hair color, will always use 20 volume for everything. And here's the problem with that. And I was guilty of this too for many years. If you mix 20 volume with a 1N hair color, what's going to happen is you're going to get a small degree of lift. So even though the color may look nice, give or take a few washes, that beautiful blue-black hair color is going to end up fading maybe to a lighter brown or a little bit brassy. So it's important to have the proper developer selection. If you've tried a deposit-only color or demi-color and neither of those have worked, it's time to amp it up to permanent color. Everyone's hair type is a little bit different, but I recommend using 10 volume developer. You can just get standard developer 10 volume. You're going to use a 1N shade, because level 1 is the most pigment. That's also the darkest shade of hair color you can get. And then you're going to also be using a blue kicker. So what a kicker is a kicker is extra pigment that's added to the hair color, and that can give you a different reflect. Now at a level 1, if you mix like a red kicker in, you're not going to really see it, because the level 1 has so much pigment in there that it's going to offset any other kicker you add in. So typically at a level 1, we're either adding violet or adding blue or ash. And there's different reflex you can give black hair color, because everyone always assumes that black hair color is black hair color. There's no tones of it, and that's not true. You can have black hair color that has like a violet-y tinge, or you can have a black hair color that has a really nice shine. Typically for that, you're adding yellow to it. I've had people that will do a demi-glaze, or they'll just take a yellow kicker and they'll paint it over their hair, or even semi-permanent hair color, and that will give the black hair a lot of dimension. What we're going to do here is I'm going to mix. I'm going to type in my formula that I'm using for you guys so you guys can see. 15 grams of 1N and 15 grams of blue kicker. With 30 grams of 10 volume developer. I'm going to process for 45 minutes for maximum development. Any hair color, especially if you're going under 40 volume, you can process for 45 minutes. You do get the darker side of the shade. Typically though, if you wanted to, do the minimal time, 10 volume, that'd be about 20, 25 minutes. Because this is a mannequin and mannequins are unpredictable, but I have pre-prepped my mannequin. I'm pretty sure that she'll take well. I'm going to be using the dark brown quadrant. It is kind of hard to see if my phone light will still work. If you see, it's a nice, about like a level, give or take a level 4 around. So what you're going to do is, I also want to mention this too. If your hair has color added to it, or it has highlights or bleach, that's going to impact the effect of this. If you have bleached hair, you want to make sure you fill it first, and that's a topic for a whole nother video. So I'm aiming this video for someone who has virgin hair and someone who is just coloring their hair for the first time. So I'm going to go mix up my colors, and I'll be right back over here to apply. Let me just see where my whisk is now. I'm like having one of those days where I'm like misplacing everything. All right, so got that secured. All right. Ah, Cynthia, great to see you. Oh my gosh, I was actually wondering about you. How have you been? I miss you so much. Did you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year? Oh, very nice. If you ever need help coloring your hair, let me know. We're doing a blue-black hair color today, so it'll be interesting. One of the things that I find is that myself included, professionals and the consumer that does their hair at home, we often neglect the what I call the intensifiers. Basically, when you're coloring your hair, I'll show you all when I'm done applying this. You guys can see this is already starting to change because their intensifiers are intense. I'm using Lanza hair color, which is a really good brand. Lanza is great, and the other one that's really, really great is Chromastix, because they have really good intensifiers. You can make like permanent shades of blue. Make sure your client is aware of this, because some of your clients, if you tell them, oh, it'll be blue, they don't really understand, and then all of a sudden you're finished and they go outside and they get that blue shine and you're like, oh my gosh, my hair is blue, what am I gonna do? You also gotta remember that blue is one of the strongest pigments in nature. I always use this example. If you guys ever have paints, mix paint and see that if you mix a ton of blue and if you mix a ton of yellow and you put a drop of blue in there, that can turn all of your yellow green. The same is true for hair color. You tend to find blue with your darker shades. And if you're going lighter, like you don't really see blue shades in like blonde, because that would offset the blonde. But your blondes that are going really, really light, a lot of the times are using ash, which is very similar. Oh, thank you, Cynthia. I had a really nice holiday. It was really nice. We were surrounded by family, and that's all I could ever ask for. You guys can see the stuff is already starting to turn like a smoky gray color. Now, the same technique and the same formula that I posted, you guys can use on yourself or on your clients. If, let's say, your client says, I want like a really dark brown or black hair color with a violet tinge, you would just replace the 15 grams of blue with some violet kicker. And let's say that you don't have any violet kicker, you can always swatch out on the mannequin. You can take a little bit of red and a little bit of blue and mix it so you get violet. So it's always an option that you can do, just in case you don't have the proper stuff. Cynthia says, I was considering blue or purple. Would you suggest highlights or color? Oh, that is really nice, Cynthia. You know, it's totally up to you. I think that you could probably rock an all over purple, and you can do highlights with some of a lighter shade of purple. It's great because your hair is naturally a little bit darker. You can use what we call a high lift purple, which is fun. You can have a lot of fun with those shades. And when you're applying color, a lot of the times I see people that go all over with the brush and to make a mess. Try to keep your brush flat, and you just kind of paint the hair like, almost like you're spreading peanut butter in like a sandwich is what I kind of describe it as. And my own personal preference for hair color is I prefer to do cream color because it stays where you put it and it's not an all over mess. I mean, back in the day, you know, all we really had was liquid color. That's not as popular now because liquid color, you are limited to what kind of shades you can use. Mixing liquid color is a pain in the butt because you have to carefully pour, and that can also spill some. And also the other fact that with liquid hair color, making it is a lot more expensive, and it doesn't stay as stable. Like for cream color, you use a little bit out of the tube, it stays good for quite some time. You don't have that stability with liquid hair colors. And normally when you're doing hair color, you're supposed to apply it from the mid shaft and ends. Because this is a mannequin, it really doesn't matter. And I would say that on a person because of the fact that the shade is so dark and you're not lifting it at all, you're just depositing it, you're going deeper. You don't necessarily have to worry about that. I don't believe it would make that much of a difference if you applied it just from like I'm doing root to end. It's all going to end up relatively the same shade. There's not going to be any like hot roots. If you were going lighter, you would definitely have to apply from here down and then go back in and apply at the regrowth, because the roots would get very, very warm and very light, and the rest of the hair would look deep. Now, if your client, let's say, like I mentioned before, we have to fill. If your client was if she was all over bleach blonde, there could be a chance that we could not do this, and I'll explain why. If her hair is very porous, like let's say, she's been bleaching her hair out and it's very, very damaged, what's going to happen is that her hair may not absorb all of the dark color, and it can actually turn a scary shade of blue, like not a cool blue, like a very dull blue or a very dull purple. We don't want that. So because she's really, really blonde and porous, we have to fill the hair. So we have to put back in the red, and we have to put in some of the blue. So you'd have to make her hair like a red shade, and then you would put another filler on top of that, and then you would go and fill in with your color. Even then, there's no guarantee that that would stay, because if her hair is that porous, it's still going to fade out. Porous hair rejects warmth and accepts cool. So getting the blue is not going to be an issue, but making it stay is going to be hard because you're missing the necessary warmth. Another issue too is, like, let's say your client gets keratin treatments. Keratin treatments use a very, very high heat. So that's going to be a situation to really, think about either using a demi or maybe a deposit only. Because what's going to happen is she does that keratin treatment. You hit that hair with a 450-degree iron to seal that keratin in. Guess what? Some of that color is going to go bye-bye. You can definitely lighten hair at least 1-2 shades if you're doing a keratin treatment. The other thing you want to make sure is if your client is doing relaxers, if they're doing what I call the thio relaxers, that is compatible with hair color. So, you don't have to necessarily worry. If your client is doing sodium hydroxide or no-lie relaxers, that's more high risk, because relaxers, they drastically change the hair's pH because they're eating away at the hair's cuticle. And a 10 volume could actually cause a certain degree of lift and potentially damage the hair. So they do not recommend using oxidative color if you relax your hair. People do it anyway, but I personally always try to stay, cautious with that. Okay, we're almost there. One more important thing too is that when you're coloring someone's hair, if they do have gray hair, you might want to go in and fill it with either a demi color of some sort, because what's going to happen is if your hair color line that you're using is not made for covering gray hair, is you might get natural little highlights of blue. I would always strand test first, and when in doubt, contact the manufacturer, because every hair color line is different. And that is all applied. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to carefully, break up the hair. Because this is oxidative color, you want the hair to be able to breathe. You don't want to keep the hair all flat to the head, because oxygen can't get in there. In order for hair color to work, you need oxygen. So I'm just going to take this and carefully break apart the hair. and let the oxygen flow through that. I'm going to take any remaining color and just make sure that I had correctly outlined. And if you guys can see, this mannequin is already starting to turn a little bit of blue. And another thing too is that you can use kickers. People ask this with high lift hair colors. One thing to be careful of, because a high lift hair color is made for blonde hair, I actually would not use blue. I've made this mistake once and the client's hair had a blue tinge. I had to actually mix lightener and warm water just to kind of break up some of the blue. If you want to use a kicker for a high lift hair color, use the silver or use the pearl, because that kind of blue, like a blue in a, if you're using a blue for blonde, it's called a pearl, and pearl tends to be more of a very light blue to like a silver. That gives you a nice balanced blonde. The blue here is way too harsh to do that. You can also use this with reds, but just be mindful that your red is going to be more of a true tone red because this will counteract any orange. Although personally, I just add the red kicker because I find that that intensifies my red better. Sometimes some of the kickers, if you use blue with red, it might turn it purple, or you can actually cause like a brownout. So I'm going to just take these gloves off. I'm actually going to go and I'm going to go get my iron. I'm going to style the other mannequin because I know y'all wanted to see what that looks like when it's styled. So I'll be right back. I'm going to go set this aside. So this mannequin I did yesterday, this was the strawberry lemonade pattern. I did a warm blonde and I feathered in pieces of pink. And with a lot of these styles, because this was a painting technique, whether you're doing a balayage or you're doing the Pittori technique, you want to make sure that you're styling the mannequin in a way that's going to show off that color. And because this color doesn't have a definitive root line, it looks better when you curl it or when you wave it as opposed to having straight hair. You'll notice too, when I talk to clients who are doing a balayage, one of the things that we go over is styling. So most of the time when you have a balayage, you don't want the hair to be completely straight because it doesn't look as good. There might be some lines in there. You want the hair to be wavy so it has dimension. And that's usually not a selling point, but I guess a breaking point. If a client does not want to take the time to style their hair, or their hair is naturally straight and they don't want to wear it wavy all the time, then maybe a balayage may not be the best bet, or a painting technique may not be the right choice. And instead you want to do foils. Oh, sorry, Cynthia. Let me know if the audio is bad on here, guys. But Cynthia says I have a small gray patch in my front right, which I really like. I missed the part where you said the gray hair. Oh, so another thing, when you're working with color, Cynthia, you have to be mindful, because some hair color brands, you're supposed to mix neutral in there, or they'll tell you in their manual what you have to mix for it to cover gray. If you don't have that, what could happen is the gray hair can actually turn a lot lighter, or it can turn a what we call a hot color. It'll be like a hot roots, or it can turn an off color. This particular shade I made is a dark black color with a little bit of blue. It's like a tinge of blue. And if someone had all white hair or gray, it could actually look like they have blue highlights. So that's always something to be mindful of. The blue may be a very nice blue, or it might not. And that's why I always tell people, make sure you're using the blue that you want to use, because if you have let's say a bit of gray, and you put this color on and it comes out like a grayish blue, that may not be the blue that the client wants. Typically, the blue that you like is like a more vibrant one, like a deep blue or a true blue. A lot of those dark brown colors or ash colors that they have, they'll call it like blue black, or they'll call it like violet black. They might come out an off shade if you use them on gray or white hair. And that's the fun part, but also the stressful part is that all color brands work differently to a certain extent. So a lot of the times when I'm just testing something out, I usually try to ask the person at Sally Beauty if I could read the manual, or even at Salon Centric, I try to read the swatch book there, because I always never know what I'm getting into. So what I'm going to do for the styling on this mannequin is I'm just going to take larger sections. I'm using a curling wand, and I'm going to be curling the hair kind of like in a spiral fashion. She's already been pre-prepped with styling products, with heat protectant. And whenever you're doing more of a natural look with the natural curls, don't be afraid to do different pieces. You can do some a little bit thicker, some a little bit smaller, because that all creates a natural wavy look in the client's hair. And these mannequins, these mannequins end up curling right up, so you don't have to worry. Look at those awesome curls. And if you guys compare, see how this kind of shows off the color better than when it's straight? You're able to get more dimension. So one of the things that I always struggle with is that when you're switching hands to use the different iron, you want to make sure that you're trying to get the same angle. So on this side, I was holding my iron like this and I'm wrapping away from the face. I'm doing the same on the other side. So I'm taking my iron like so. I'm going to silk the hair like this. And then I'm going to take the hair and I'm going to take it like so. I'm going to twist, take my iron, and I'm going to curl away from the face. All right, so one of the great things with this look is that you can leave it as is. It kind of has like this nice, fun, playful, bouncy, curly look. You just kind of give it like a shake. And she's got like this almost like a mermaid look, big volume curls. And then what you could do is just take your fingers and you can actually take. Oh, Cynthia brought up a good point. Said, I never knew that. That's how the iron comb should be used. I always thought it was supposed to be open when it turns to get there. Yes, yeah, Cynthia, there's many different ways to get curls, and that's the crazy thing that I learned. You can actually curl hair with not a hairbrush, a flat iron. It really depends on the look that you want. If you want curls that I guess are more turned inward, you could turn them in and style them differently. If you want more volume, you want to typically curl away from the face. So like if this is your iron, you're going to be wrapping the hair away here, and it'll be wrapped like away there. And you're going to take your fingers and run it through the hair. And these mannequins have like a cowlick like I've never seen on anyone. Oh, hey there, Yvette. No worries. Everyone, Yvette, who's in the comments, her account is Miss Pretty Lady. I gave her a shout out in the beginning. Yvette was the one who suggested we do blue-black hair color. So Yvette, the mannequin is actually processing. What I'm doing now is I'm just going over how I'm styling the previous strawberry lemonade hair color. I know the lighting here is bad. I'm working on trying to set up a ring light thing or some better lighting. If y'all can see, this mannequin does look a lot better when it is curled. You see more of the color better. The color concept makes sense. You can also take a brush. Any kind of boar brush is really good with the natural bristles, they're also called, because that will help distribute the oil evenly throughout the hair. One thing I will tell you guys is that anytime you get a fresh head of hair color, doesn't matter if it's blonde or if it's red, or especially if it's direct dye, you never, ever, ever want to use hairspray right after a hair color, because what could happen is hairspray has alcohol, and on a fresh head of hair color, you're actually going to remove some of the color by hairspraying it. It's interesting because I never thought about that as a stylist, because when I was behind the chair at the salon, we would have clients, we'd hairspray their hair and then we'd say, oh man, I got some, I don't know, it could be like red hair color on my pants. So you'll take the hairspray and just kind of spray it and that red disappears. The same hair color that's on your pants that's staining it, or your shirt that you're spraying, is the same hair color that's being, that is in their hair. So what happens is that hairspray will dissolve it on your clothing. It's also doing it inside the hair. I always tell people, think of your hair as like a fabric. Like we wear fabrics, hair is very, very similar. And fabric is important because that's when we talk about like textures and all that stuff. This client, because she does have a lot of hair, but it is kind of fine, she could benefit from a bit of like a protein spray if you just sprayed it, because protein expands it. Someone with my hair, because my hair is very coarse, wiry, it gets like wavy to curly. I do not want to use protein in my hair because that makes my hair frizz. It makes it get, poofier. I actually want to deflate it a little bit. So I would use more of a moisture-based product line. Although mannequins are always difficult because they are a bit tragic. And that is going to be the finished look. If I can get her hairline to work with me, that would be very nice. Yeah. So here's an example of the kickers. We added this one. It's kind of hard to see in the lighting. See how blue that is? That's the blue. We have X, which is green, violet, which is really purple, red, copper, gold, silver, and pearl. Now, because we're using darker shades, any of these three would be perfect. You can make more of like a greener or an ashier black. This is for a blue black, and this is for violet black. If I mix this into the black hair color, that will do nothing. That might just make it turn a little bit like a very dark violet. If I'm missing violet, you know what I could do? I could add equal parts of the blue and the red to get the violet. If you add gold or the yellow to the black, that's going to give it a little bit more of a warmer tone. It's not going to be enough to turn it orangey, which is good. It actually makes it become a little bit more shiny. You can actually take this and make it with, or mix it with the semi-permanent. I've done that a few times and then put it over dark brown or black to give it some shine. Now these right here, if you're doing blondes, you want to use one of these, the pearl or the silver. The pearl is really great because you get more of a violet tone. The silver is great for blue. This is what you could mix into the any of the high lifts that you're doing. If I mix this into any of these high lift blondes, it's going to turn it blue or green. So that's always something to be mindful of when you're working with this. The other thing I want to mention is that a lot of these hair colors, you want to look at their neutrals or their what they call their naturals. A lot of the hair colors out there on the market, they don't always tell you what base they have, but if you look at the neutrals or the naturals, these tend to be a little bit more on the cooler side. We're actually using this one, which is 1N, it's natural black. There is no level 2. If you want a level 2, you have to make it. But it's almost like a negligible difference. There's not much difference between the 1N and 3N. 3N's a little bit lighter. So let's say you have a client who you don't have enough hair color to do the whole head and she's getting the shade. You can just make your own level 2 and it'll look very similar. It's not going to be that much of a drastic change. And if y'all can see this, the bowl is a little bit blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, I'm going to end this. I'm going to go rinse out the mannequin. I'm going to go style it. I'm going to come back for just to show you guys what it looks like. And we're going to do a quick Q&A if you have any questions. So I'll see you guys soon.